Welcome to Wisdom Talk Radio, a collaborative community of explorers in conscious living. Welcome to today's episode of Wisdom Talk Radio. This is where we get to explore the depths of conscious living and how to live an expanded life. Join us to be encouraged and inspired and transformed and to tap into, hopefully, a deeper sense of joy and of possibility. How do we change the current face of healthcare in the US, which is built on a foundation of unequal access and standards of care? And that's not an easy question to address. So many people have tried to address it in different ways, and it's still elusive. It takes courage of a magnitude that is rarely brought to bear on how to tackle this. And yet, it's what my guest today tackles on a grand scale. And while this may be a little bit of a topic, it is one that's essential to embrace. So I please encourage you to stay with us. I think you're going to be inspired. Before I say anything else, I do want to say that I have been inspired in reading the book of my guest today. So that's all I'll say before I introduce myself. I'm Laurie Seymour, host of Wisdom Talk Radio and CEO and founder of the Baca Institute, home of the quantum connection process. You go there, you can go to the Baca Institute meaning you can go to the website, to discover your unique connection with the essence of who you are by taking the quantum connection quiz. Why quantum connection? It's really that we're each designed to directly connect with Source in our own unique way. And understanding and knowing what your own archetype is helps you to create a deeper connection with the universe, which is truly the secret to creating the kind of life that you want. Because who you are is exactly who is needed. So my guest today, and I've given him, I've at least started a build-up. My guest today is Jamye Chapman. And since we connected several weeks ago, we've had a few different conversations, just emailing back and forth. And because we also connected on social media, I've been seeing his posts and I'm going, wow, I can't wait to have him on. Jamye Chapman is a senior health policy and strategic planning expert at a leading national healthcare nonprofit, where he leads initiatives to improve health outcomes for Medicaid enrollees and advance optimization healthcare systems. As the founder of the Inner Peace Foundation, Jamye facilitates seminars emphasizing emotional intelligence and organizational psychology. He has a deep commitment to fostering human-centered systems that serve all segments of the population, meaning everyone. He is the author of Evolve Your We, From Courage to Connection in a Divided World. Here's what it looks like. Here's what you get. Welcome, Jamye, to Wisdom Talk Radio. I am really happy you are here with us today.
Thank you, Laurie. I am so happy, and hearing you speak during the introduction, that actually really inspired me. We don't hear enough about the universality of humanity and the connectivity that we just all inherently have. We hear a lot about the corruption of our humanity, even though we don't typically speak in those terms. At least in my circles, we don't talk about the corruption of humanity, but we certainly see the outcomes of that corruption. And so, just really happy to be here with you today to kind of talk through how we can bridge that gap between like our our better human selves and the things that we've kind of grown into, good, bad, indifferent, right? There's things that I'm sure we all want to improve on and change about ourselves to, like I said, reach our fullest measure of who we can be as human beings.
Yeah. That's always been what has moved me in my life. I come from a background of having been a psychotherapist for many years. And why I got into that, why I went in that direction was because I really wanted to understand what was possible for us. What's our potential?
Mm,
And that's still what moves me. I've changed so much of how I do that and what I do, but that experience of separation and connection
mhm.
is to me the essence of what we get to traverse in our life, but in our collective life. Ah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. And the other thing, I know you have questions, but
No, 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 please.
excuse me, the other thing I love that you mentioned that really, really aligns with a lot of my work is this idea of potential. And as much as we continue to harm collectively ourselves and oppress certain segments of our population, we as long as that happens, we will never be able to even scratch the surface of what human potential can be.
Mm,
And I talk about this a little bit in the book, where a thought, experiment for folks to think about, how many Albert Einsteins or Beethovens have we missed out on over the last millennia,
mhm,
right? And certainly over the last half millennia, particularly in our country, where people just they haven't had the ability to express themselves in those artistic and creative ways because they're worried about, where they're going to sleep one
mhm,
night to the next,
mhm,
or whether they can eat, or whether the lights are on. Um, Let alone worrying about just going to school, right? And I talked about some of my personal stories growing up in an impoverished community. Um, and to us, the thinking about something other than survival was a privilege.
mhm.
So yeah, I just wanted to uh, highlight that, that aspect of us being able to thrive, and really what this work that you do and what I do is really all about is helping us reach our full potential,
Yeah.
all of us.
All of us. Because if we don't, if we think it's just reserved for a select group of people, well, not only do we miss out, but it's so patently untrue that
Mm,
even that select few cannot really meet and express their potential. It's impossible
absolutely.
because we
Right.
are part of a whole. I think
Right.
that's what I hadn't thought about that, that we certainly that we would be talking about this, but that we are part of a whole. And if we're
Mhm.
going to really embrace all of what we have available to us, we have to embrace the whole.
Have to. We have to understand we have to get a holistic understanding of our perspective, right? In all of the parts of our reality, even the ones that we choose to hide away from.
Hmm,
And I say
hmm.
we because all of us do this. All of us have bias. All of us have ways that we use our privilege to harm other people, right? And that's also part of one of the core
Hmm,
tenets of my book is we are natural creatures with instincts and biological processes that we can't always control, and sometimes those things can be corrupted despite our intention.
hmm.
And so just being aware that we have the capacity to do that allows us to intervene, right? Like, hey, I'm acknowledging that when I see Laurie for the first time, my brain is going to create a picture and a narrative about Laurie simply because the way I've been conditioned to believe about white women in our country
Mhm, mhm,
from my social context.
mhm,
Uh, but I'm aware, and so I can intervene on my heart's behalf because my heart wants to meet you my heart wants to meet the Laurie, just the Laurie. My brain wants to meet the narrative part of Laurie, but I get to intervene. We get to intervene on our heart's behalf and kind of break that corruption with our superhuman power, which one of them is logic. Um,
Hmm. Okay, so we could go in so many directions right now. And as you're speaking, I'm hearing, well, I want to know about this and I want to know about that.
mm, mm,
So let me focus that in. You just mentioned superpowers, and I know one of the ones that I really want to talk about is creativity. But
mm.
let's give a foundation first. So what do you mean by superpower and what are they? Because you mentioned
Yeah,
logic as the first.
right on. Um, so what I call superhuman powers are the things that differentiate us from other natural beings on our planet, animals, and plants and such.
Hmm.
We have the ability to use logic or reason to override programming. So things that might be instinctual for us, we have the capacity to override that. That's and for my framework, that's a crucial element of being able to step into the courage that you talked about in the introduction.
Okay.
The second human power is empathy. Um,
Mhm.
and once you've gained this ability to kind of override your programming, you've gained access to the ability to have empathy. It doesn't come automatically. It takes work. You have to have an intent to evolve you
Mhm.
right. You have to
Mhm.
have an intent to be better in order to have access to the empathy. But once you have access to empathy and you have relationships with individuals and you have a reciprocity of empathy, now that potential we were talking about, we get to use our other superpower of creativity
Mm.
to vision what does the world, what could the world look like now that we are all um, I won't say free from our natural inclinations, but aware of them and have committed to move past them to make a better future for everyone.
Mhm.
So now you and I get to sit down um, with a perspective of neutrality around our extrinsic characteristics,
Mhm. Mhm.
and then we get to use our now newfound emotional relationship, our newfound connection to humanity, to each other, and think about how can we both thrive in this world. And so those are the superpowers that I mentioned that allow us to get to this space, allow us to get to this place where we can actually evolve what our concept of we
Mhm.
looks like.
Okay, so I need to I need to ask you about what you mean by natural inclination
Mm,
because I think of that or I hear those words and I think much more fundamentally than I suspect
mm,
you are meaning them. So I'm thinking our original connection with source, our original connection with God, presence, whatever word you want to
mm,
use. That's not
mm.
what you're meaning.
Not
No, I mean, at least not in this particular
Not
frame.
in this, but correct. You're absolutely right. When I say natural inclinations, I mean our biological process is the way our brains process information. Like as humans have evolved over the course of time,
Mhm.
in both our psychological capacity, but then also our survivability,
Mhm.
our brains, our genes, our DNA has been programmed to do certain things to protect us. One of those things is quickly categorize threats,
Mhm. Mhm.
quickly categorize ways to um, hoard, whether it be information, money, resources, people, etc. And you can see that throughout the course of history with the various nefarious institutions that have been implemented by humans over the course of time.
Mhm.
And my thought on that is that we have this proclivity for an addiction to power and control, because at one point in our evolution, we had to survive. We didn't have technology. We didn't have farming
Mhm.
techniques that could supply an
Mhm.
entire, biosphere. We didn't have the education that we have now and such. And so,
Like who could get to the tiger first to kill him to eat the meat? Is that
exactly,
okay?
exactly, right. And so, what happens, right, as we've progressed and evolved, from a technological standpoint and from a sociological standpoint, we've kept a lot of those inclinations.
Hmm.
We've kept a lot of that, me versus them mentality, or zero sum
Right.
mentality,
Wow.
where if I have the resources, this person, I'm making sure I have it. I don't, this person can have it, but if them having the resources would prevent me from accessing
Mhm.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs, then that's a no-go. That's a threat. Empathy isn't possible at that point.
Wow.
Um, yeah.
You're kind of blowing my mind in a way here, because I'm realizing as I'm listening to you that I probably hold a fundamental, we are all connected, and we've learned these ways of being separate. We've learned that if you have it, I don't. If I have it, I don't care whether you have it or not, just as you're saying, but I want to make sure first and foremost that I have it. So
Hmm.
the whole premise of evolve your we is really talking about it, I think, as an, and this is even after reading your book, as an evolutionary impulse, if you will.
Yep, that's certainly part of it, but I don't want to discount what I also believe, that we have foundational inclinations to love and empathy. And if I didn't believe that, it would be hard for me to construct a way for us to get back to it.
Okay. Okay.
So
Yes. Yes.
so yes, when a baby is born, it's been scientifically proven, right? When they bond with their mother, their brain waves actually synchronize.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That tells me that we are emotional, relational creatures, and
Mm-hmm.
we need each other.
Yes.
And
Yes.
the thing that I was explaining, and I guess I wasn't clear about it, or I didn't delineate, is we've corrupted that initial empathy,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Okay.
Because we've been in survival mode. And then we've learned, to your point, we've been learning how to further exploit people, how to further discriminate against people, because we've learned that that can benefit us in a certain way. And that's why I related it back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Right. Right.
We've
Okay.
we've
This is
determined, yeah,
this is really juicy. This is really good because I that makes sense to me. I can get behind that. And it
right on,
also, in my experiences, it feels true. It
yeah,
feels true. And so it's both an evolution and a coming back to, a
yes,
returning to.
that's it,
Okay.
that's it,
So in a personal sense, and we can't do all the stories, but
yeah.
why are you, okay, let me ask you it this way. Why are you the one that is bringing this out now into the world?
That's such a beautiful question, um, for lots of different reasons. One, I'm thankful that I was gifted the level of courage that it requires to, um, set aside my anger about my social context and my positionality in our country. Um, and what I've seen over the last several years, and just a little bit of context, I think ever since I was young, I had this feeling that I was supposed to help people in some way. I was supposed to serve people in some way. But while I was thinking that, the people that I was around, both in my community and outside of my community, seemed not to want me or like me or accept me.
Mhm.
Um, and so, as a child who was called white boy and black Jesus and all of these monikers that really pointed towards me being an outsider, and then me understanding the historical context of our country and slavery and Jim Crow and all of the things that your audience knows and you know already, it kind of left me in a weird space. But I also knew, going back to our other point, that when I had the opportunity to speak to someone one on one and get to know them and share where we agreed, like things that we were passionate about, all of that color social construct stuff never mattered. It
Mhm.
was just about us
Mhm.
and the things that we aspired to and our hopes and dreams. And so I knew that there was something happening in our society that needed to be interrupted. And it took me a long time to really think all of these kind of concepts through. Um, and so when George Floyd, speeding up to the George Floyd murder, um, that really ignited something in me that had already been there, but at that moment I felt like I needed to no longer sit on the sideline
Mhm.
and watch these things happen and opine on these things with friends or colleagues, but I actually needed to do something. And so I started to put together this framework and tell my story about um, what strategies I use to create perspective neutrality, which is um, what I call setting aside um, my natural desire to want to categorize a person by the way that they look,
Mhm.
and put them in a certain bucket without actually knowing them. And so going through that process and getting explanatory power, which is understanding the who, the why behind their behavior, behind the words that they use, allows me to enter an empathetic space with them. And if I can enter that empathetic space, we can have communication, we can have human connection. And
Mhm.
if we can have human connection, we can transcend all of the social constructs. And there's no greater point in time, I think, in my lifetime where I feel like this is needed.
Wow. I want to take that in for a moment. I mean, because that's a really powerful statement. If we can transcend that, we have changed the face of not of humanity, but of the social construct, which is
Yes,
false, which is just
yes,
simply false.
simply false. Before the 1600s, maybe the 1500s, even, there really wasn't this concept of race in terms of a color based
Mhm.
system, right? It
Mhm.
was more about how much money you had, what religion you were in. Um, People traded with African nations,
Mhm.
and people traded with Asian nations, and people traded with Nordic nations all the time without this concept of inferiority or superiority, right? That really wasn't introduced until a lot later on in the evolution of humanity.
Mhm.
And so, to your point, they are social constructs. We've just been doing it so long. It's been so ingrained in our societal structures that it's very difficult to break free from that without, like I said, intervening. That's why logic is one of those superpowers, because if you
Yeah.
can understand that, you then now you're opening yourself up to more possibilities, to understanding that even as a black person, even though I know I've been harmful and I've produced trauma to other people, um there's space for me to forgive myself, because I know partly the way that I've grown up in my social context has conditioned me to have some of those behaviors.
Mm,
And if I can grant myself forgiveness as a Black person, why would I not be able to grant another person forgiveness for being who they are?
hmm. My whole body is kind of tingling because this feels so important. You created what you call the arrived framework, I think, out of all of this. And I'd
Correct.
love for you to speak to what that is and because it's talking about individual transformation and systemic change, systemic transformation. Um, how do that seems like such a big it's a big thing to tackle. You've said, okay, yeah, I knew I was here to do something. I knew I was here to serve in
Yeah.
some way. And this feels like yours to do.
Yeah. Um, so really, the ARRIVE stands for, I'll just give you the
Mhm.
acronym:
Thanks.
awareness, recognition, reconnaissance, investigation, visualization, enactment, and engineering and deliberation. And as you mentioned, it is a twofold process where an individual can undertake uh, go through this process, as well as organizations
Mhm.
can do this. My my belief, though, in terms of organizations, is that the organization cannot um, get to a transformational change without the individuals within that organization working on their journey to
Right.
transformation change,
Mhm, mhm,
which is why I believe some of our systems and policies are still producing the same outcomes, because we haven't really focused, particularly in the government settings,
mhm,
don't really focus that well on well-being of their staff. And that's not a knock on them. It's just I've worked in the government for years, and it's a lot of work.
mhm,
It's a lot of responsibility, and folks typically are just like, "What's my job duties? What do I need to do?" And then they
mhm,
kind of move
mhm.
on.
And
Uh,
introspection and self-awareness and transformation, personal transformation, not on the table.
not on the table, not on the table, and in fact, taboo in some
Ah,
ways.
yes.
Right?
Okay.
Because it's leading to almost a spiritual religious type of nature, and you really can't have that, right? But anyway, back to your question. So this process is the evolution of the we. So
Mhm,
when in my when I was putting this together and thinking about how can I bring more people into my circle of trust, um, and what is it about me that's preventing that from happening, right? So
wow.
first, yes,
Oof.
so yeah, it's not a external what happened to me thing, right? It's what am I doing in my current social construct that is helping people around me um, become part of my we. People who otherwise my brain would tell me is a threat, or my brain would tell
Mhm,
me is meaning to do me harm. And so, yeah, it starts with awareness, right? We've talked a little bit about it. Um, Being aware of where I sit, honestly, honest awareness of where what my social context is in our country, um, all of the historical trauma that has been produced, understanding that, yes, there are uh, things that have happened in our society and in our country that perhaps have put people who look like me behind the eight ball,
mhm.
so to speak. Um, and within that, where do I have agency? So, for example, this might be controversial, and I don't mean to be controversial, but here's this. I'm going to give you a point of why this is so different than what currently is being proselytized around quote unquote DEI. But where I have agency are things like education, things like um, continuous learning, things like having courageous conversations, things like being transparent, open, and honest about my feelings and thoughts with those people, with people who I otherwise would perceive as threat, having courage to ask questions out of curiosity, not out of anger,
Hmm.
right? Those are the ways that you become more aware and you get those things that I talked about, explanatory power and perspective neutrality. Um, and then recognition is part of that, recognizing the harms, recognizing the potential opportunities, going out and actually talking to folks, sharing authentic experiences with people would be part of reconnaissance. And then I'm a nerd to the core, or at least I try to be, especially about data. Um, but from a very scientific, technical perspective, like really trying to understand what is the root of the problem, what is the root cause of whatever problem may exist in an organization, or with my ability to communicate with a certain type of personality type, or a certain a type of person from a segment of our population, and then visualizing with them, like, well, how could we make this relationship better? How could we enter in our interactions with each other with more empathy? Um, what are the things that you find offensive? What are the things that you find, maybe if I say anti-racist or white supremacy, that those concepts might be true and valid at some level, but how does that make you feel? And that's important, that it might make you feel a certain way. Um,
And in
and
today's
then,
climate, where and it's something that I don't think I want to understand. Okay, I'll be really honest with myself
right
about
on.
it. Um, when people talk about, well, we can't talk about DEI because that makes some people feel uncomfortable. That's what I can't
Mm,
tolerate. I just like,
mm,
but really what it is, what you're speaking right to that, which is that willingness to go beyond, to maybe go beyond our discomfort, our initial discomfort, to see, so what is this? And I so appreciate that you're not speaking with any kind of I don't hear anything loaded.
mm,
I don't feel judgment in it.
mm.
I feel like you're describing something,
Yes,
not labeling it or judging it.
yes, because then I would have to judge myself by the same standards,
Well,
right?
you'd be having to turn around and say, "Oh, now I'm disrupting this potential. I'm disrupting the potential we."
Ab- you're absolutely right. And there's a chapter in the book that goes into this idea of people being aliens.
Hmm.
You know, like in, we often, or I'll just speak for myself, I often feel like people look at differences as people are aliens. And the reason that they do that is because it makes them easy to disassociate
Hmm.
humanity from that person.
Yes.
So if you think about all of the evil, quote unquote, evil people in the world that have committed atrocities across our world, we like to think, oh, we would never do those things. We would never, if I was in that position, I would never have instituted slavery or had slaves or tortured people or, done lynchings. But the fact of the matter is, I haven't been in that position. And the other fact of the matter is, I don't know if I would have done that.
Hmm.
So if I occupied all of the DNA, genes, nature, nurture, circumstances of an individual who was in the KKK, there is nothing different about my humanity that would suggest that I would do something different than that
Hmm.
person.
Hmm.
So that's why I can't judge and I don't preach judging, because, like I said, people come into their wrong beliefs, honestly. They wake up, they're born, and then they start learning,
Hmm.
right? And some of the things they don't choose to learn. Some of the things just get hammered home, and because of our biological processes, the brain captures it. And so to your point, yeah, no, there's no labeling or judging because at the end of the day, what I fear and what I feared when I started this, and what I would tell other I'm not a DEI practitioner, but what I would tell DEI practitioners that would I would often hear is we have to be careful that we're not simply flipping who's dominant and who's being oppressed. And the
Mm-hmm.
way the conversation is happening now, that's where we're headed
Mm-hmm.
because we're not talking about human connection. We're talking about what somebody did to another person and how can that issue be rectified in a way that now puts this other person here and this other person out of the room. And I would tell them, like, if you're going to talk about inclusivity, you can't have an affinity group that's just all one type of person. That doesn't make sense. That is the very definition of exclusivity. So
Mm-hmm.
we can't take the white man off the boardroom because he was always making the decisions in the name of inclusivity. That doesn't make sense. All of us have experiences that contribute to this better vision of our society. And we all need to engage in that space to do that work. And that's really what the engineering, enactment, and deliberation pieces
Okay.
to arrive is about. Making sure that all partners involved, whether it's in a community, an organization, a family relationship, that we're co-creating and collaborating on what the future should look like so that all of us can thrive together fairly and justly.
Mm. You know, my definition around co-creation has to do with our individual connection with source. And that
Mm,
really we're always, when we are feeling that connection, when we're living in that connection, we are co-creating. It's not
mm,
just me and, God is outside of me. It's that presence is alive and well and expressing through me. And the
mm,
same, then we go into an organization, and if you have people who are perhaps exercising their awareness, to
mm,
speak to it the way you're speaking about it, then we can collectively come together in co-creation because everybody's there with knowing that they're not separate. And I think
right.
maybe that's what it is that everybody fears, well, I'm separate from, I'm never going to talk about it, but I'm don't feel my own connection with all of life. So
Mm,
I'm going to then project it out there and I'm going to say, oh, you're part of that other, you're part of that which is not connected.
absolutely.
So I love that you're bringing in
Totally agree with that.
co-creation, in this, and I also and I want to ask you about this in your Inner Peace Institute and
Mhm.
why were you moved to create that and what is it? I mean, I feel like I could make some guesses, but I'd love to hear you speak to
Yeah. Well, it's essentially at this point, it's a consulting agency.
it.
Um, and I
Foundation.
told you,
Use the word institute, but I'm in foundation. Yeah.
oh, no, it's fine. Yeah, I found that in government spaces, Medicaid in particular, um, and I've worked in other programs too, that the empathy gap that I talked about earlier
Mhm.
and the outcomes related to how the spectrum of where that empathy gap can be, whether it's narrow or wide, has a direct correlation to people living and dying.
Hmm.
Um, and so I know that the states that I work with, the people that I work with, are mission driven. They have good hearts. They're good people. They want healthy outcomes for all of their constituencies. And yet they've had difficulty um, implementing strategies on how to bridge those gaps and bridge the empathy gap, and in particular with people that they serve. We know that systems, or we do, I feel like systems are the arbiters of equity.
Wait,
And
wait, 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 wait a second. So systems are the arbiters of equity. Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
because whatever the system, no matter what the process or the input looks like,
Uh-huh.
it's gonna the output is gonna be a direct correlation of whether or not the system was equitable,
To begin
regardless of
with, to
intent.
create it in as a foundationally. Yeah.
Correct,
Yeah.
regardless of intentionality. And so when you're as a healthcare organization or any organization, you're able to bring in the people that you intend to serve into that process analysis, process co-creation piece.
Mhm.
of, Here's the inputs that we're putting into the system. Here's the process that we're going to create to facilitate those inputs into some type of result or outcome. And then here's the outcome. It always works better when everybody is at the first stage. But most of our systems right now have been created by folks who are not um, maybe not as aware of this human connection that we're talking about, that's necessary in order for us to evolve our we. And so the systems are set up in a way that really help certain segments of the population. And so the folks that I work with, it's really me helping them get back to that place of empathy, so that we can have trusting relationships with our partners, our members, the people we serve, and really co-create with them and collaborate with them to build not necessarily new systems, but better systems so that they provide the same equal access, and equal opportunity for health as everyone else in our population.
Whew. Wow.
So that's what drove me to the Inner Peace Foundation. I
Okay.
felt like there was a need there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
There is. There clearly is. And eh, so much of what you're talking about, I feel like you could have gone either in the direction of being, forgive me if this is at all offensive to you, because it's not meant, a preacher.
oh,
You could have been a preacher. I mean, I could see you standing up and, you know, really bringing people to a deeper understanding by it.
yeah,
And you do by your words, and you've chosen to focus it in a particular arena.
yeah,
And yet you've got such a big perspective. You know, you've got a meta level that really needs to get out there. I guess that's what I feel.
I appreciate that, Laurie. So you wouldn't be surprised to know that my formal education, at least the beginnings of it, was in pastoral ministries. So there you go. You're clairvoyant.
Okay.
You're letting your clairvoyance show here.
Really, I wanted to say that in the very beginning because it was like, oh, wait a minute.
Mhm.
Because you have that capacity is really what it is that you're tapping into something that is, this is why I think it's funny that your first superpower is logic, but you're
Mm,
tapping into something that to me is beyond logic.
mm. Yeah,
And
it's
that doesn't
spiritual.
negate the need, but I understand what you're saying when you're bringing in our capacity to look at to look at our own untruths, to
Hmm.
look at where we've been conditioned to believe certain things that
Hmm.
don't have any basis in reality. They don't have any basis in truth. They're just simply how we have been raised or what our life experience is.
Absolutely.
So um, I'm glad that you start with logic and you go so far beyond it.
Yeah,
Into
we didn't even get to the forgiveness piece,
I know,
which
I
I
know.
should have included as a superpower as well. But
And
that's a huge,
forgiving ourselves first for the judgments that we carry, for the separation that we carry.
you're hitting it on the exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Whew, I think I have to have you on again. If you do that, if you would
Oh,
great.
I would love it. This has been so great. I feel like we just got started.
I feel that way too, and I'm looking like, oh dear, okay, I probably need to, start wrapping this up. And if I look at, okay, I always have questions beforehand, but I don't. barely asked any of them. And I feel like there's been so many times as we've been talking where I want to say, but I want to interrupt you and say, but what about this? What about that? So I'm being a good host and not interrupting you and until I can't stand it anymore and have to ask a question.
I love it. This
Yeah.
has been so great. I mean, to your point, I know we're running a little bit out of time, but just, I mean, the one thing I would want to leave with your audience, right? Like, it takes courage. This isn't easy. You have to want to do it. It's
Mhm.
not a step by step, process where, oh, all I have to do is go to this church and
Yeah.
have dinner with this person, and then now I have empathy. No, it's not that. It's more about what you said, Laurie. It's more about like accessing that more spiritual level of who we are and understanding that, or desiring that who we want to be as human beings means ultimately loving other human beings. And if a person truly doesn't want to love other human beings, this is the thing for them. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
so
I'll say I'll add one piece to that, which is I think there's something even more fundamental to that
mhm,
capacity, which is we have to feel that love within ourselves, for ourselves, from ourselves, and
agreed,
then we can extend that out.
agreed.
I'm just in the midst, by the time this interview goes live, it will be out there in the world, but I'm in the midst of finishing my book, Unconditional Remembrance. And it's
Oh, I
about
can't
our
wait.
remembrance of who we are and our original connection to
I
source.
can't wait. Oh, yes. You're gonna have to send me a signed copy. I can't
I
wait.
will. I
Because
will.
you've really introduced me to something that my writing coach asked me about 100 times during the process of me writing my book. And he would say to me, Jamye, some of this sounds a little spiritual. Like, do you really want that? And I would have to and I told him, like, I want to balance the spiritual. A lot of what you're saying, it really is resonating with me. And now I wish I would have put some of that in there, but I just can't wait to read your book.
Mm.
I'm excited. And this has just been so lovely.
I same for me. Would you tell people how they can find you, where they can find your book, how they can reach you?
Absolutely. www.evolveyourwe.com is my website. My contact information is there. I have free resources for organizations or individuals who are looking to do things like empathy gap mapping or assessing whether or not they have
Mhm.
perspective neutrality, et cetera. All of those things are there and they're free. And then you can email me at jchapman@evolveyourwe.com.
Wonderful. And I am extremely embarrassed to realize that I have been pronouncing your name wrong.
You know what? It happens every
Well,
day.
I never asked, but I never asked. And I knew I had misspelled it when I was writing to you early on, but it's Jamai.
It is. Yeah, it's
Okay.
July.
Okay. Well,
And I forgive you.
thank you. And it'll take me a moment to forgive myself, but I'll get there.
That's awesome.
Ah, well, Jamai, thank you so much for everything you have graced us with today. I really appreciate it.
It's been my pleasure, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Yes. And I want to thank our audience for being with us today and for listening and for sharing it. I hope you will share this with others that you know, maybe with, decision makers, with people that, have the capacity to change things in the world. And you may be one of those people. And I hope you are one of those people who are a change maker, whether that's inside your own life and you want that personally, or you want that for the world, for our bigger society, our bigger we, as we evolve our we. So do share it, do leave us a review. And for more for you about your own personal journey in your connection with the we, with the bigger source, go to the Baca Institute and take the quantum connection quiz and see what that offers to you. And we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us here at Wisdom Talk Radio.
We wish you well in your conscious explorations. For more information and to join in the conversation, our website is wisdomtalkradio.com or at Wisdom Talk Radio on Facebook.